Here are my harsh truths for dating and relationships for men 18 to 35 years of age. What I'm going to do is just list a few statistics and discuss how those statistics apply to men looking to date and get into relationships. Now, none of what I'm about to say is to make you feel disheartened or upset if it does apply to you. What it is designed to do, though, is to make you realise that these are just the numbers, these are just the way things are, and there's nothing you can do about a fair bit of it, except one thing, which I'll talk about later in the video, and that it should reorientate you back to your locus of control. What can you do to improve who you are mentally and financially in order to give you the best chance to date and to hopefully find a meaningful long-term relationship, maybe get married and even have children. So just please remember that when I go through these numbers, a lot of this applies to you. Some of it applies to me myself, hence why I'm making this. So here are some numbers and I'll just list them out. According to the research around dating apps, particularly modern dating apps like Tinder and Hinge, it is the case that at a minimum, 45% and up to over 65% of women using dating apps will set their height filter to 6 foot as the minimum. All right? As the minimum. Now, this is despite only about 14 to 15% of the male population being 6 foot or taller. So really, that means that about 86% of men using the dating apps are going to be screened out on height alone, regardless of whether they're really handsome, they've got great morals and values, whether they earn a good income, and any variety of really great things they might have as a person and as a man. In addition to that, if we look at further data, it is the case that 80% of men are reported to be below average looking according to the majority of women on these dating apps. So 80%, and that doesn't necessarily even include height, are considered below average looking to most women. So compare that with the height and you can see there's already a couple big issues with big filtering there. When we look at match rates, we also see that on average, women on Tinder predominantly and swiping based apps have a match rate of about 44%. That is, they're matching with about 44% of the men that they desire, whereas men have a match rate of only about 5%, and that number gets worse if you look at the median. It's only about 2% actually match with their desired person. So once again, not a great thing to see. Obviously, there are a lot of issues with modern dating apps compared to the old days when it was on a computer, like plentyoffish.com and OkCupid and things like that. The way the apps are designed with a profit motive, which I can understand in terms of business, is very interesting to see. But these things are largely built for improving dating for women. Not that they can't get dates or have access to men. They have, I think we can mostly agree, and women would agree, a lot of power in the sexual marketplace and effectively are the sexual gatekeepers. So these apps aren't really designed necessarily to help them improve on that because they're already doing quite well. It's designed to help them get more of exactly what they want and refine it significantly. Now, that comes at a cost to the majority of men, as you've just heard with the statistics. Now, well, why is that a problem? Well, that's a problem because if we look at more data, we can actually see that it's the majority of men, over 60%, look for or have the intention to date, right? So they're really wanting to date, whereas that number for women is significantly less. It's about 38%, or thereabouts. So if over 50% to up to just over 60% of men are out there wanting a relationship and are actively looking to date, and significantly less women do that, and significantly less of them, in addition to that, actually have the intent to go through with meeting up with men, then straight away the issue there is not that men aren't trying to get dates or go out to meet women and establish those connections. It's women doing that. Women are doing it to themselves. So just know that that's not your fault. And then you add that with those statistics I mentioned about the filters. That's quite a brutal reality. If we look at sexlessness, there was a large study done, and it's often quoted, that looked at data, I believe it was from 2001 to 2002 for men and women, and the sexless rate over about a 12-month period for men, if I believe, was a little over 18%, nearly 19%, and for women it was about 15%. So that means 19% of men hadn't had sex in the last 12 months, and about 15% of women hadn't had sex in the last 12 months. Fast forward, I believe they brought that forward to, I think it was about a decade later, or a bit later than that. That number jumped significantly for men. So it went from about 19% up to over 30% of men in the last 12 months hadn't had sex. And for women, it had changed as well. So their sexlessness also went up, but it went from about 15% to about 19%. So men are out there wanting to date, looking to date, and genuinely considering dating with the matches that they do have, but women are not wanting to do that. In addition to that, men are wanting to have sexual intimacy, and women are not wanting to do that. Now, why is that interesting? Well, it's interesting because we often hear a lot of social commentary around a lot of women saying, "Where are all the good men? Why don't I get approached when I go out and I dress up nicely and I'm at the bar or the club or at the event?" Well, the reason for that is because we had the Me Too movement, and we've had about 10 years of hardcore modern feminist ideology. I'm not talking about first wave and second wave feminism. We're talking about modern feminism, third, fourth, now fifth wave feminism, that has encouraged women to move from a humanistic perspective of seeking equality for women and women's rights to what is now, quite honestly, either borderline or blatant misandry and hatred of men. You can't raise a whole generation of young women under 40 believing that all men are predators and they've only got one thing on their mind, etc. When you've done that, you can't expect that therefore men are going to feel comfortable approaching you, and you know, it's already awkward enough, right? Risking rejection is already hard enough, and it's usually, historically, we know, and we see it in movies and all these sorts of things, and we hear the stories from our parents and grandparents. The fear of rejection is very real, and it's real for women as well, but they're not the ones generally doing that. They're the ones wanting to be chased and men to pursue them. But if men are going to fear that rejection, that's one thing. But there's a big difference between that and the false allegation. Namely, at the lower level, being called a creep, or at the high level, being perceived as a predator or be accused of sexual harassment. Now, that is not a game that a lot of men want to play. They don't want to have their character completely assassinated, let alone potentially risk being dragged through the criminal justice system. So for women out there, please consider that. The buck stops with you, really. You're the ones not wanting to enter the dating market. You're the ones not being willing to date. You're the ones with the extremely high standards for dating. I'm not saying don't have standards and boundaries. That's a great thing. You should. But be a bit more realistic. If you're already screening men out, 86% of men on height, or you already consider 80% of men below average attractiveness, even if you're not actually an attractive person, right? Then you're to blame for your own lack of relationship success or dating success, okay? You're the gatekeeper, and you have welded that gate shut for really this last 10 years and for the younger generation. For young men, that's disheartening. You've got to constantly blame yourself. On top of that, you've got to go through education systems which have curriculums that are designed to effectively paint men as young boys as well as predators, and that goes right through the whole education curriculum from kinder to year 12, as we see in respectful relationships education in Tasmania and Victoria, which I've got a huge piece to do in a video on that later on in the episodes that I'm doing. But you've got all of that, and then you've got workplaces with highly feminised HR teams. It's not a great place for men to be, and they are fearful of approaching women. And it's not due to necessarily a lack of confidence, it's damage control, and it's being safe for them. It's protecting them. So this might also explain why, dating apps aren't really great for men and women. Every relationship I've got into has been with a woman through a dating app, and I'm very thankful that I met at least 2 of those women. My first relationships, absolutely. My last relationship, absolutely. My middle relationship, absolutely not. That was traumatizing, but we won't go into that. But it does mean that it's not particularly conducive to a man's mental health and well-being to be on these apps as opposed to going out and talking to women. Because at least if you're a short guy like me, maybe, I think the young people call it rizzing or whatever, you can go and talk to a woman and introduce yourself or pay her a nice, genuine compliment, risk the rejection, take it on the chin, make a light self-deprecating joke and move on. Or maybe you have success and it goes well, which my last relationship it was like that, which is lovely. Or you can be on a dating app where the odds are completely stacked against you, and people, I think men are starting to realise that these aren't good places for them, and women are realising it as well, but for different reasons. In fact, if we look at Match Group, which is a publicly listed company in the US, they pretty much have a monopoly, not quite, but pretty much over dating apps. So Match Group actually own Tinder, Hinge, OkCupid, Plenty of Fish, and a bunch of other apps. Their share price over the last 5 years has plummeted over 77%. In the last 12 months, it's had a slight recovery, but from those bottom lows there. Bumble, which is publicly listed by itself, and obviously the CEO came from as a woman from Tinder and created a feminist app, which hasn't really been working because people are starting women are starting to realise that they actually do like men making the first move and being pursued. Generally speaking, although I understand maybe it's a refreshing app to have. The Bumble share price over the last 5 years has collapsed over 93%. 93%. Is that a reflection of COVID-19 discretionary spending being down? Well, probably, because we've had hard economic times, inflation, terrible interest rates, yet the apps have continued to exist, and the prices certainly haven't gone down. Prices have gone up. Interesting note about that, when I was using Bumble, and I've used Bumble a few times, you start with the free version and you run out of matches or whatever, and you go, okay, let's see what happens if I pay for the premium version. I have found that in actually paying for the premium version and getting more choice, right, that I match less. I match more when I don't pay for it and match less when I do. Now, why is that? Well, if there's a profit motive involved, which of course there is, it's in the company's best interest to make the system that so it doesn't give you a date or very few dates, and that it doesn't match you with the right people, because it means that the date goes bad, well, you're back on the app. If the date goes well, you're off the app and you don't need to use the app, and they don't get their monthly subscription. So it's in their best interest to not actually match you with people you want to be matched with, let alone give you a meaningful relationship. that's the way it works. They weren't always like that. Back in 10 years ago on internet was Plenty of Fish, OkCupid, etc. They had psychometrics involved that meant that you could eHarmony, sorry, is a big one too. You could match people, and if you got an 80% or higher sort of rating, there's quite a good probability that you'd get along really well, and that was probably a good person. Unfortunately, it's not the way things are now. I'm for capitalism, etc., but this is an example of where it goes really wrong. So, anyway, what does all of this mean for men? Well, unfortunately, it means that one of the main things you need to work on is, well, yourself. It's not unfortunate, I should say, it's a good thing. You do need to work on yourself. Everyone needs to work on their self, but you do need to actually prioritize self-improvement. Don't be a narcissist, but self-improve. Make sure your mental health is spot on, and make sure financially you're on your way to some great things there in terms of working towards a large financial goal. You've got to have that sorted out before you enter into a relationship. If those things aren't working out and you're struggling with your mental health or finances, and even your close friends or your family are worried about you, then that's not a good time to get in a relationship. You need to be entering into a relationship from a point of strength, not a point of weakness. If you enter into a relationship from a point of weakness, which I've done unfortunately a number of times, then it's not going to end well for you. It's not going to end well for you. And particularly if you have aspirations and goals that are going to take time to work towards, it's very difficult to find a woman who's willing to be there for the whole journey with you. Do those women exist? Absolutely, but they're far and few between. There is a reason they say behind every great man is an even greater woman, and that is true. A woman can be the single best investment you ever make in your life, right? Or the absolute worst. And unfortunately, divorce data, family court, custody of children will give you a very clear indicator of how badly that can go for a lot of men, unfortunately. So you've got to work on your earning potential. You've got to earn money as soon as possible. Maybe don't go to uni unless that university degree out of an undergraduate level, 3 years, 4 years max, gives you immediate utility. Maybe it's a business degree or something like that where you can use it across different industries, or for entrepreneurial endeavours, or it's a specialisation, law, or it might be engineering, medicine, whatever, then you just have to do it. But I would encourage you to really strongly consider nowadays whether university is the right path, because I can tell you right now, someone spent a decade at university is now going to spend another 3 or 4 years, but at a different level, which will open up some pathways, that the opportunity cost of going to university is that you're not going to be earning anywhere near as much money. So if you can work for 3 or 4 years, even in a casual minimum wage job of $25 an hour, you can save a lot of money if you're careful with your money. And you can, as soon as you save money, the quicker you can invest that money into the stock market, and the quicker you can build a nest egg, so that by the time you're in your 30s, you have some financial security, which means that you are a more stable person, a more confident person, and that women who are wanting, particularly in their 30s, because they don't have time to mess around because of biological clock, it's just a harsh reality. You can't be unfair to them and not have your life in order and keep them waiting around for you to get your finances in order. You need to get moving as soon as possible, right? Because when they want to get married and have children, you need to have some money there to protect them and your children, okay? That's just the harsh reality. I'll do more videos about investing and the stock market a little bit later. Financial advice, not financial advice. Another thing to consider as well is actually participation rates in the workforce. So men are participating in the workforce more than women. It's 70 or something percent around there, and women it's about 60%. It's about a 5% or 10% difference in the workforce. On average, men are working about 38 hours or thereabouts a week. Women are working about 31 hours. Women work more often part-time than full-time, men more often full-time, part-time, casual. So on an average basis, men are out earning women on a yearly basis, or whatever you might put it, quite simply because they work in more hours. There's a lot of nonsense and misnomers around gender pay gaps, etc. What little gender pay gap there is, particularly in the Western world, can be put down to true illegal practices in employment, and those should be pursued to the fullest extent of the law through Fair Work Australia, etc. Although they are a bit of a toothless tiger. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if you go to them, the next step's saying like federal court, and it's very stressful. But if you've got a genuine case of being underpaid, you've got to go pursue it legally. If you don't want to pursue it legally, you want to keep complaining, that's on you. Take control or don't. But that pay gap is explainable largely by that alone. It's multifactorial. Interestingly though, young women, so under 35 or thereabouts, are actually out earning young men on an hourly basis. So men are out there participating more in the workforce, looking for work more. Women aren't, but women on an hourly basis are actually getting paid more than young men. They're also obviously doing better at university, out-graduating men. For example, it's now the majority of solicitors are women. A lot of high-paid positions are now predominantly female-based, which, that's great, good for them. But also that comes down to things like hypergamy. You talk about hypergamy. Women want to marry on the same level at a minimum and generally up. So if you're financially not at that level, which a lot of men on a comparison basis to women their same age just aren't, then you need to consider how you can once again increase your earnings and do better. If you have a partner who's out earning you, that's lovely, that's great, good for them. You should support them, and vice versa. But you should also value add to that relationship as much as possible as well. Obviously, the average age of women having children, or parents in general in Australia, is about 32, 33 years of age. So you really need to be getting your finances sorted out before then. You can't control your height. You can't control necessarily how you look in the face or anything else like that, but you can work on your body, get a good physique. You can groom better. You can dress better. You can work on charisma. You can work on your intellect, your humour. Humour is a big one. There's lots of things you can do regardless of those really rough statistics. You could go get leg extensions, which would, $100,000, total waste of time. You could have those leg extensions for $100,000 and attract a few women and look like a T-Rex, or you can pump that $100,000 into the stock market and let that run for 10, 20 years, and then you can stand on a stack of money and be attractive to more women that way and have the confidence to boot, right? So that's what I would recommend there. That's just the harsh reality of the situation. Men are really trying to look for relationships, are really genuinely wanting to date and get into relationships. Women are not really wanting to date and not wanting to get into relationships, yet they are having more sex and men are having less sex. So really, as I said, the buck stops with them, but you can't control their desires or what they look for, right? Everyone has boundaries and standards. It does seem that when a woman has standards and boundaries, it's okay. It's okay to discriminate against height, but if a man has boundaries about a woman's body weight, which is something she can change or whatever, then all of a sudden he's a sexist pig. That being said as well, men don't actually mind women who are average body type or a little bit overweight compared to a woman being worried about height, which is a totally different thing. You can't change it, and it seems to bother most women, height, whereas a nice woman who's pretty looking, she's lovely, kind, polite, good values, very nice to the man's family, her body weight really doesn't matter. So that's saying for women as well. Like, don't get obsessed with the Femisphere. Obviously we've got the Manosphere, but don't get obsessed with the Femisphere and things about all these obsessions about looks and too much makeup and all these kinds of things. Men are not interested in that. We want the girl next door. most of us. Some don't, but that's on them. So yeah, work on what you can control, guys. That's what I would say. All of this you've probably already know and you've heard. Obviously in the Manosphere, which I don't consider myself part of, I'm more of a, maybe you could say I'm a men's rights activist. Unfortunately, that's lumped into the Manosphere. And the reason I don't like that is because you've got a lot of sort of really hateful men and content creators in that area, which I don't want to be part of. They do talk about some things that are true, that are facts, things that I've mentioned, but the way they deliver it with the misogyny and the sexism and the hatred and the bitterness and resentfulness it's not going to be helpful to you. So take that energy and time into watching positive male role models online. Obviously, people like Dr. Jordan Peterson, who I hope is recovering and doing okay, doing well, had a great impact on me. Not every young man has a great male role model, but I encourage you, to surround yourself with men that are better than you, and to look up to men that are better than you, and spend time with them so you can learn and grow as a man yourself. Yeah, so I guess that's all I've really got to say. Really make decisions around your finances. Try to earn money as soon as possible. Don't turn down low-paid jobs. Just do it. Save as much as you possibly can, and I'll do a video about how much you should try to save and investing a bit later on. And have your boundaries as well with dating, and what you expect and what you want in a woman, and focus on what you can control, right? What's in the locus of your control. Really focus on that, and ultimately, with time, a great woman might come into your life, and likely will when you least expect it, right? When you're not even looking, it will happen. But you've got to look at the long-term picture. If you want marriage and kids and you're an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old, you've really got about 10 years there to really secure yourself financially, mentally, emotionally, and also within your soul to get there and to work on pursuing a long-term meaningful relationship. Otherwise, I would just say to you, try not to be bitter at women and angry at women. This is just the way things are, and yeah, you either roll with the punches or you curl up in a ball and you cry, which I'm sure we've all felt like doing, right? But anyway, that's just a bit of a ramble from me, and I'll unpack things a bit more in some other videos. But yeah, I would encourage you to hang around if possible, please. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Even if you've got negative comments, let me know, right? This is all a new process. But the best way to support my channel is to subscribe and all those good things. You can also obviously use the discount code Existential at my business, ADVIKATE, which is a clothing business based on the values of freedom, adventure, solidarity, and truth. Values I hold very dear, and I hope that many of you will as well. The website is advocate.au, so ADVIKATE.au, and that link is in my description. Anyway, that's all I've got to say at the moment. And as always, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.